Hello, welcome to ICEF Berlin. Welcome back to many of you. Nice to see so many familiar faces. Nice to be back here at the Intercontinental Hotel. Today we are going to be talking about digital identity. And before I get these guys to introduce themselves, I thought I should probably define what digital identity is and reassure you that this is not going to be a boring technical discussion. Thank you. Digital identity is simply the information that a computer uses to recognize us and to represent us. And as more and more of our lives go online, as more students' lives go online, as students are being recruited, facilitated by organizations such as ApplyBoard, as they're being marketed to by organizations such as geNEOus, as what used to be physical international student identity cards become digitized by companies such as ISIC, it is more important than ever that we can trust and protect these digital identities. So we've got three genuine experts with us today from different parts of the student journey. Jimmy, can you give us a quick introduction? Introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Well, hi, my name is Jimmy Bataglia. I'm here representing ApplyBoard. I've been in the industry for like 14 years now in different roles, and right now I'm part of the ApplyBoard family.
Indeed you are. Jody?
Hi, thanks, Ross. I'm Jody, and I'm from Savvy Youth and Student, who is the exclusive representative for the ISIC in Australia and New Zealand. I've been involved in the international youth and student sector and travel, study abroad, volunteer internships for the last 18 years or so, and then also been involved in the transformation from our traditional plastic ISIC card into our digital solution that we have today. I'm looking forward to today's discussion.
Alejandra?
Thank you. So I'm Alejandra Otero. I'm the founder and CEO at geNEOus Academy. So we're an education marketing consultancy. We work with the K-12 industry, language schools, higher ed, and we basically take care of all of their digital marketing activities, community building, CRMs, etc.
And Jody, seeing as ISIC are the, as you just said, traditional sort of supplier and protector of student IDs, can you just give us a quick kind of intro where you guys are now and where you would like to head in terms of digital IDs?
Yeah, sure. So right now we've spent the last few years, I'd say probably 5 or 6 years, transforming from plastic into a full digital solution. And as you can imagine, there's been a number of things that we've had to look at and consider. It's not just a overnight transition. So right now we have a full digital solution where students can view and display in a secure and comfortable app environment their student ID instead of having a plastic. They can also access their discounts, their benefits and so forth within that app, and also various other sets of generic information regarding destination or certain topics, all within the app. In addition to that, currently, we also integrate with third-party apps, so with our partners, which is becoming more and more popular pretty much as the weeks and months go on, in integrating our digital ID solution into these third-party apps or into our partners' apps. So we have universities and organizations that have their own app. They've got their own functionality, their own services that they provide, and we basically provide a digital solution in terms of the ID component within that app environment. And not only that, currently we can also transfer that benefit portfolio into the third-party app. So at the moment we have a working and a robust digital solution for our students and our partners. Going forward, I think what's key is that our students want more, but within less, meaning that they want the simple ease of use applications, mobile device applications, in a very simple, easy to use format, but they want complex functionalities, and they want more service deliverables within that easy to use product. And our goal really is to move what we have today in terms of a display of an ID and the benefits and discounts into providing a lot more for students within one environment, whether that's in the ISIC app environment or whether that's in our third-party app environments. It's creating an environment where a student has a very simple, easy-to-use solution in one app or in one environment where they can have that student ID, the benefits, the discounts, the school calendar, whatever it may be. So that's the goal. But I think it's important to note that it's constantly changing. and us as service providers need to be aware that what we have today and what we think they might want next week or next month or next year might need to be changed, because the demographic or the student segment that we're dealing with, they're constantly changing as well as to what they need and want, and we need to be able to kind of adapt and quickly as well.
What are some of the things they're asking for? What are these complex functionalities that they're demanding?
Everything really.
Okay.
So we've done a number of surveys and a lot of research within our student base, and everything from course calendars, so timetables, rosters, to events that are happening, to the enrollment process, to the full student journey from the time I'm looking at deciding whether I want to go overseas or study domestically, what options there are, the process itself, even, you know, in terms of payment solutions. So we work with a lot of providers and partners globally where we integrate with a payment solution in order to be able to deliver all of that within one solution. And that's what the students are asking for, is they've got all these steps in their process. How do they get all of that, but within one easy-to-use product? Because essentially they need the expertise of all of the service providers, but that's a lot of service providers that they need to deal with.
Yeah, so what used to be a discount for the cinema now seems to be some kind of super app from recruitment and admissions and managing the university as well. And the students can access these retail offers and benefits directly from the app as well. So this is a marketing tool, which must make someone like you very happy about the possibilities and potential of targeted marketing to these students.
Yeah, well, I think it's important to focus on the identity from a marketing perspective as well, and what does it mean. So we are tracking a lot of identity elements through interest, demographics, behavior, etc., which from an advertising standpoint sounds great. But I do think there's also a very important concern there in terms of privacy and ethics that needs to be addressed. And therefore, we from NEO find ourselves at a crossroads where a lot of institutions are coming to us saying, well, I want more effective ads, for example. Well, great. Now the question is, can we get to more effective ads without extracting so much value from the end user or potential student? And I think there's a very interesting environment out there and very like alternative solutions that can be explored. So I don't want to get too technical, but maybe rethinking some of the existing ways of communicating by, for example, using some techniques like zero knowledge advertising. I don't know how much we're familiar with this, but it's basically I'm not revealing the user's identity to third-party providers. What does that mean? That I can still get to you with an ad without extracting that data from that potential student and giving it to someone else so that they can also use that data. And so there are some actions that are already being undertaken. For example, Google, when they announced that they wanted to take their federated learning of cohorts initiative by 2022, well, they pushed it to 2023. What does that mean? That instead of targeting you as an ID, I would try and target you as a group of interests. So I would limit how much I focus on your personal identity and rather focus on the group to be more privacy preserving. There are other initiatives as well, like that initiative from Google shifted towards something called the Google Topics, which is now they are trying to access the top 5 topics per user per week, for example, and I'm going to deliver ads to you based on topics of interest. What about demographics? Does that mean that I'm actually removing the digital identity feature being driven by demographics and therefore focusing on interest? That's something that Google is exploring and wants to do. There's other browsers like the Brave browser, for example, which is actually preserving privacy, and in their configurations, everything is already said that ads are blocked. So that's an issue for advertisers. But at the same time, it enables you as a user to take determined action saying, well, I want or I don't want ads. And therefore, I can engage in some ads and I'll be receiving rewards and being paid by my attention being delivered there. And in exchange of my data, you give me something back. And therefore, maybe we can rethink about this, apply to education marketing and say, well, it is still possible to target people based on their consent and therefore being privacy preserving and at the same time being accurate enough to actually reach the target. So hopefully we get to hopefully we get to see these initiatives more.
I personally don't mind targeted ads, but they can be a bit freaky, obviously, and I know they're perturbing to some people. But the idea of Google knowing that I'm a student and I want to study English in Canada without necessarily knowing who I am is powerful and cool, I think.
It is.
Okay, great. And you guys, Jimmy, ApplyBoard is approaching this from the other end, and it's super high stakes for you guys because you need to be able to digitally verify someone's identity for study permits, for offer letters. Can you give us a quick intro into how ApplyBoard is doing that and perhaps about ApplyProof?
Yeah, absolutely. So ApplyBoard sees everything, every step and everything that is built inside of ApplyBoard is thinking on the student success. And when you think about the student success, you need to see the whole student journey. So when a student, wants to study abroad or wants to, pursue higher education, and in this context abroad, you need to first find your transcripts, whether that's on the high school or the university. You probably need to translate it. Then you need to find what's that program that you want to do abroad and then apply and try to get an LOA. Before that, you need to get a language test to get that. Once you have those documents, then you apply for the visa. And right before that, you need a proof of financial as well. So if any of those steps fail, the whole experience fails, basically. If you don't get the proof of financial, you're not going to get a visa approved. Therefore, you're not going to travel to the country. And so that's a big problem if you're thinking about the student success. So there are many things that are beyond our control because, are more things at our government level, and I hope we can get to talk a lot about, digital identity in the bigger scope in all the people that needs to be involved. But there are some things that we can actually help, and that's why one of the ApplyBoard brands is ApplyProof. So ApplyProof was created just to help during some of those steps of the student journey. And what it created was basically a trust platform. It's just an interface that connects the person that needs to verify with the source of truth. So that is really useful, and I mean they connected to financial institutions. That's for the proof of finance with language tests, so they can verify that the results of a student test was actually accurate. And right now it's connected to over 15 DLI institutions in Canada, and they're getting way more. So what this does is that whenever the immigration officer gets an application and they can easily verify, they can make an unbiased, more efficient and faster decision in terms of, at least they know these steps are right. And I think that's one of the reasons also why, ApplyBoard has better rate of visa approvals than the average in the country as well. So in those steps, ApplyBoard was able to develop the technology and also thinking on the future whenever the whole industry and I guess the world gets more into digital identity and we keep, evolving into that, ApplyBoard is already 3 steps ahead, right? I mean, all these technologies need to be done with, if you're connected to a financial institutions, you need to be SOC 2 compliant and you need to have all the infrastructure to be able to, do this efficiently and with the security and privacy in place, which is, security and privacy is made by design and everything done at ApplyBoard. So that's what we're doing right now, and just, also being ready in the infrastructure of things and the organizational way to just to be ready for what's next.
You used the phrase source of truth there when referring to databases, and so the way that you're identifying students at the moment and checking they're legitimate or checking that their credentials are legitimate. So you guys have direct access to the databases of ETS to the different institutions. So
we don't keep any data. It's in a way, serverless. We just connect to the source of truth directly. So we're not keeping any data in the process of verifying that. So basically, when you're verifying that an LOA is correct, it verifies in the source of truth, let's say inside of a college. And that goes back to the person that is verifying. We don't keep any data on that.
Sure. This must be very fun to do in Canada, where you guys are quite ahead of the game and, managing the databases and privacy. But doing this in some of the student source countries, I'm thinking particularly India, must be very challenging to access authoritative databases and sources of truth in those markets.
Yeah, and I mean, when we think about, when I think about the future, right? I see myself, if I'm a student, I see myself going through an airport, someone is scanning my QR code, and the immigration officer doesn't have to even, you still needs to tell me, welcome to Canada, right? Because I already know the LOA, the English test, everything, all the steps are verified in the source of truth. For that to be true, if I need to verify the transcripts, for instance, I need to, the school that I study, my high school, need to have the system in a way that is verifiable as well. Whether it's with ApplyProof or not, it needs to be verifiable. That's when we also talk about the interoperability of systems, right? Because, probably we won't be in absolutely every single school in the world. That'd be great, but, if we are true with ourselves, the idea is that there are different systems with the same standards that can, work with each other.
And Canada's ahead of the game and is actually trying to do this and like on a federal level, right? To make it. In the UK, for instance, we are completely fragmented. If we were to try and do this, my primary school record is separate to my secondary school, is separate to my university and all my vocational training. All the data is kept in different places, in different ways. They are not interoperable. They don't talk to each other. And I think we are the UK is slowly trying to bring that all together and make it to a consistent framework. And I know you guys in Canada with DIAC are way ahead of that. How are things in Australia? Have you guys...
in some aspects, still quite fragmented, and others getting there. I think we're still a long way off, probably, from what Canada is at.
Okay, and would this help us also with the marketing aspects as well?
Well, I think Jimmy brought a very interesting element, which is interoperability. So if we're talking about a digital identity and an international one, one across borders, is it one identity? Is it multiple identities? Is it online? Is it on site? And it's the sum of these different identities that will define the person's actions. And therefore, I think from a marketing perspective, we have to understand that it's no longer the person in the passport. It's also what is defined in the metaverse, for example. What is the avatar, the NFT profile picture, that also defines the digital student identity. And therefore, from a marketing standpoint, it's also more challenging on how we're going to be accessing either one or many identities at a time.
Perhaps one identity where we can choose, we the consumer can choose which fields to share, when and with whom and with which organizations.
Absolutely.
That's one of the, if you read the 5-year plan of DIAC, for example, you mentioned DIAC in Canada, they talk about the same challenges, right? When it's identification versus identity, right? When I'm using this for an authorization versus when I'm using it for different purposes. So all that need to be defined. And they also talk about you were talking about the user having control and, being able to check what they want to share or not to share or anything. But then you said, I'm okay sharing everything. I think most people, especially when they're in Europe and they get this GDPR box that comes in every website, people just click, accept all cookies and move on, right? I don't think many people...
I don't think they do in Germany. This is the country where people are most conscious about their online privacy, I think.
Okay, so I think that we will evolve to that as well. I think there needs to be a lot of education in terms of what are you sharing, why are you sharing it, what can companies do with your data. So it needs to be a lot of education for people actually go in the settings and saying, I'm okay with this and I'm not okay with this.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good point with Twitter is that, Elon Musk just took over and it's been a very interesting 3 days. I'm usually not on Twitter, but I have been in these past 3 days. And he made a statement for advertisers, basically. And they say, sharing data is not always bad. Some people really learn about new products that are interesting for them, whether it's a treatment for medical reasons or whether it's a product that you really want. So if we block absolutely everything, I think that's not necessarily something good, because then we go back to television time when, you try to point to millions of people. So the funnel goes, and then you try to talk to someone. So it's not efficient for the advertisers for sure, but for the users as well, because then you need to be exposed to many things until you find something that really gets your attention. So it needs to be a balance there, but I'm not sure how we're going to...
I fully agree. And I think there's one component, for example, for identification, because that's also an important one. We're logging in many platforms with our Facebook or Google login, because that's faster, right? Or what you said, like, yeah, let's click here, consent, let's give consent to the cookies because I just want to get rid of that pop-up. You have no idea what you're doing while you accept that. And so all of that data from a marketing standpoint is vital, but at the same time, I think the in-between is what is it that I can access with my consent. So consent-based marketing. And therefore, it would be even more effective, because I am actually, if I'm accepting to be somewhere or give my data, to whom and which kind of data, if I can decide on that, I think it would even be more targeted. And for the advertiser, it could be even better, because yes, I would have less quantity, but maybe more quality. And therefore, I think there's this kind of balance that we need to match. And we're on that quest.
And therefore, less waste and greater efficiency, which is what we're all looking for, or at least in the ads that we're targeted to see. Okay, fantastic. And how is that working with you guys? Because you obviously have a lot of data points about these students already. So are the students very conscious about how you're going to use this data and the privacy, the access that you're giving to brands for them?
Well, at the moment, it's not commercialized in a way that our brands would be able to utilize the insights that we gain from the usage of our cardholders. The consent and their opt-ins, so there's them selecting a certain offer or brands as a favorite, is really for their benefit. So it works in a way that whatever they select and their usage and how they've set up their app would benefit them in terms of future searches and future, purchases or redemptions. At the moment, we haven't really explored the marketing side of it, which is an opportunity, but it's an opportunity that we need to tackle with caution, because we have a trust from our members. They have an ID that they can trust in, and it's secure, and we provide them a service. And we need to be careful that we don't all of a sudden lose that trust by simply using that data for marketing purposes. And I think that there is an opportunity where we can serve the user through marketing, definitely, but we need to be careful, and we need to be very transparent with the user as to how we're using that data, whether they want their data to be used or not. Some may not want it. They may want to use that extra search and check what's in London on this day and all that, but a lot don't. And they've told us through, their feedback to us that they want to have more favorites. They want to be able to select. When I open the app, it always comes up with offers that are within my geometric location. Some do, some don't, but majority do. They want us to be providing this proactive content and information to them. So I guess from a marketing standpoint, but on the user side of it, so not necessarily on the brand side, the users do want it, but they want it with an asterisk. They want to be in control. They want to be able to say, no, I don't want that advantage. They also want to have transparency as to everything that we're doing with it and who's doing, what with it. And I think that that's key, and we really need to understand what that looks like from a student and a user's perspective before we, steam train down that road, because it's a huge opportunity. And I believe that it's probably something that we will have to have a look at down the road, because our users are asking for it, but we need to make sure that it's done in the right way. And I guess the student journey, or this particular segment, it's a very unique situation, and the data and the insights and the marketing that would be utilized, it's not like, their Google search or their Facebook, something random. It would be very specialized marketing and content that would be targeted towards them. So I guess that's key to understand as well. So a user that has already got their visa, already knows which institution, they probably don't want to see adverts from institutions. If they're planning on studying in the UK, they may not want to receive information about Australia, and vice versa. So it's understanding what that looks like and really making sure that we are truly serving the user as well as providing the benefits all round.
So what would that look like? Would you be asking students to opt in to receive offers on certain subjects and access to certain brands?
Yeah, and they should be able to. I mean, especially with all the security, GDPR and everything that we've needed to, you know, make sure that we comply with, they need to be able to know exactly what's happening with that. So yes, they opt in, but what does that really mean? And like both of you have mentioned, we all click all cookies, unless I guess you're in Germany, but we all click it, but what does that actually mean? At what point can I go back and say, okay, so I know I clicked yes, but was that the right tick box? Do I need to change it? Can I go back in and change it easily? So that's the other thing. I mean, you click yes, how easy is it for us to go and change that decision?
Yeah, should it be a binary all or nothing option?
Yeah,
there's a lot more
exactly.
nuance that should be in there.
And I think choice, and students want choice. We know that they want choice in everything, right? So, and I think it's exactly the same when it comes to their digital footprint. Choice,
flexibility, transparency is what you said just now.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then just getting back to the student ID and perhaps from the recruitment perspective, we mentioned all these disparate databases that don't talk to each other, and the ideal of having a real student ID, an educational ID, where all of my records from kindergarten through to my LOI and vocational training is attached to one single record. I know Finland does this. I think the Netherlands, you're trying to do it. We don't do it in the UK. What do we need to do? What needs to happen in order to make that happen, in order to have a student ID that works across borders, that works at every level of study? What do we need to be lobbying for, Jimmy?
No, I think lobbying is a right word, right? It needs to be a lot of, I guess lobbying would be the right word, but you need to go to, the government needs to be involved, the education sector needs to be involved. It needs to go from so many different ways, because it really is not about the technology. The technology has been there. We could have done this maybe with less fancy things or with slower servers or whatever, but the technology has been there for decades. It's really the adoption of the technology and the awareness of the technology and the awareness of everyone and how can we use it. It's really bad that a student needs to go and line up in their university to get the transcripts and pay and wait for 3 weeks to get them and then go translate them. Those things should be already everything in a system and should be easy to use. But I guess, it needs to be, and you were mentioning about GDPR. So, if it goes from government level, everyone needs to implement it. So that's where the government needs to be. But at the same time, they need to involve the education system to understand also what is feasible, right? You cannot just say something, because also, some parts of the education system sector is a little bit behind in terms of technology, or they don't necessarily have the tools to implement it. So
are some countries, UK being a case in point.
Many countries. I mean, you would be surprised of how many schools, like I've been talking to schools for, different things that I've done before. And many, they still manage things in an Excel that it should be in a system, and it should be in a secure system. It should be, there's so many things that should be. So I think it's the adoption and the awareness, and also, once the government really enforce it, then there's no way back. But they also should lay out the tools and a plan for making it happen.
How long do you think, Canada's trying to move in that direction, how long do you think it would take?
I don't know.
Pick a number, I'm forcing you.
I would say no less than 5 years.
Yeah.
And I think that DIAC has that 5-year plan. They understand none of that is going to happen overnight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Guys, do we have any questions from the audience? We have 3 experts here who are very aware of their subjects. Any questions? You can quiz them. Ask them what they're going to do with your data. Chase down the ads. No? Yes, sir. Please wait for the microphone.
My question is, that sounds great, where you receive information, but there's also confidential information that we have in the school system that will be most helpful. Like if we was in counseling notes, and we could see counseling notes, if you receive students that you're unaware that maybe have special needs, or that may even have some mental health issue challenges, that's really unfair to receive them once they show up in your country and like, whoa, I didn't know this. So is there any kind of way we can get information that is that's kept kind of in the dark? That's my question.
It's a very good question. I would imagine for that kind of information, the student would have to opt in. I think medical records are particularly protected in data, in terms of exchanging the data. I don't know the answer to that question, guys. Do you know?
I would say, I mean, again, if we go back to what we were talking, I mean, there's still, you know, some applications are being sent in a field form on paper, right, and scan and send. So we are there, you know, that must be the most extreme case. So there's so much to do to be able to do that in a way that is going to be private. I mean, when you work with systems and you work with the, you know, the security and privacy level, at least that ApplyBoard has, you know, the content or the access to information is limited depending on the user that most need that information to be able to do something, right? So there are things that you can do, and there are ways of, you know, audit and, you know, really understand that there are full teams of in terms of security at ApplyBoard, and they are behind every, because security also goes into the people, right? I mean, yeah, you can have the most secure servers and everything, but if I open my laptop here and then I'm looking at a student and you're right behind me and you're looking at that, I'm exposing that data as well. So we get a lot of training, and these are mandatory training that it really gets you into, you know, understand that you are part of the security. So the human resource is also part of the security. So there's the technical side of things, and I think that's what is going to take the most work. But at the same time, I think training people, creating more awareness and more education can help today, because even if you don't have in a system, you can do things that can really protect the student. Yeah, the humans are probably always going to be the weakest link in this security chain, right? And if I choose not to disclose certain information, then no matter how good the system is, it's not going to find its way through to you. Interesting. Any other questions, team? No?
Hi there, we have a question that's come in online. Can you give us some examples of how consent-based marketing is implemented in Africa, especially when it's deployed through agents?
Alejandra, you're the marketing expert. I'm going to throw you in the deep end there. How's your African knowledge?
Well, I don't think I can reply for Africa, but I can talk about consent-based marketing, yes. It would be interesting, actually, to have a deeper overview on how it is happening in Africa, and especially in the agents market. But I think one of the most important elements in consent-based marketing, and Jody referred to it before, it's not only about when you give consent, but also when you opt out. And I think this is a crucial element that should be happening across borders. So whenever you implement consent-based marketing solutions, and this is already being implemented by some higher ed institutions in Europe, that is a fact. So I'm sorry, I don't know from the African standpoint with agents, but basically you can, again, opt in and define which levels of adoption you want. Do you want, for example, to opt in only in a specific browser, and therefore it's your history based on what you search in that platform that is going to define your identity? Or do you want to take it further and be tracked by whatever searches you do online, and therefore it's like what's happening today? So it's the difference between the Web 2 and Web 3 worlds. It's a matter of ownership, maybe, that would define this this feature here, is what kind of content I own, what kind of data I own versus what is owned by the platform. So in terms of content-based marketing, I'm hoping for across all industries and across all borders as well, that these solutions enable a more trustworthy and ethical solution for both ends of the transaction, let's say.
I'd just add, we work with agents where they issue the ISIC, digital ISIC for their students. And one of the key things is that as an agent, you actually can't opt in for your students for any marketing, because you're not that individual. So even if a student in a generic or bulk capacity has said, yes, I agree to all the products and services you will provide me, for each individual product, that student does need to actually opt in for that particular product and service. And In some countries, it may not be as regulated and, I guess, controlled. And I suppose it's very important for agents to understand that in some capacities, they can opt in, but only to a certain degree. At the end of the day, the student's an individual, especially when it comes to their digital identity or their digital footprint or their profile that they're creating online. They really do need to be opting in or opting out themselves. Because otherwise it's not a true opt-in or opt-out, because if you think about all the services and products that are available, a student probably doesn't have not necessarily visibility, because they probably are aware, but they don't have a clear understanding as to what that all means. So I think from an agent's perspective, in Africa or anywhere around the world, it's probably key to know that as an individual student, they still do need to opt in when it comes to their digital footprint and profile, regardless of the product and service.
And do you have any idea through ISIC what percentage of students are opting in or opting out rather, and not accepting offers and choosing not to share data?
No, probably not a solid figure offhand. I'd say it's probably it's above half, so probably at about the 60% mark. However, what I will say
is 60% opting in.
Opting in.
Okay.
But what I will say is that has increased exponentially over the last few years, and we continue to see that growing because more students are doing more in a digital capacity. So 10 years ago, majority wouldn't have opted in because they didn't need to. Everything was all still manual and physical based. They'd still need to go and show their card to get that discount or whatever the case was.
That card was good to me for many years. I enjoyed that.
It was. And a lot of students still want the plastic, that, tangible product, but they still want that digital experience as well. So as we see time ticking along, we're seeing that steadily incline, and we'll get to a point where majority will opt in, but it will depend on in what way and to what level.
And I guess you guys are doing a better job getting more targeted offers, so they're getting more things they want, and then it's a virtuous circle. We have 5 minutes. Are there any more questions? Any more questions from the audience at home, Lucinda? Are we all good? No? In that case, I will say thank you very much to our panel. Wonderful to have you here, and thank you very much for your time. Have a great event, and we'll see you out there.
Thank you. Thanks, Ross.
Thank you.
Thank you.